discuss the rental crisis here in Toronto. Who's to blame? Is it the tenants? Is it the owners? Is it the landlords? Is it the city or city regulations? Is it investors? Is it short-term rentals? We're going to go into it in detail and try to figure it out right now. What's up everyone, my name is Fadi Nakla and I'm a local real estate agent here in Toronto, and for the last 6 years I've been helping people buy, sell and invest in Toronto and the surrounding areas of the GTA. So if you have any questions about real estate investments or renting in the city, drop them in the comment section below. You can also reach out to me using the contact information in the description below and I'd be more than happy to help. Now let's get right into it. So I actually want to start with discussing short-term rentals. If you've been on my channel or have watched any of my previous videos, you'll see that I'm very pro Airbnb or short-term rental. I think it's a great way to make a little bit of extra income, especially for people who otherwise would not be able to afford owning a property. In Toronto, it's limited to your primary residence and can only be done for 180 days per year. So it's definitely not for everyone. I do get a lot of messages or comments about the rental crisis here in the city and how this is making things worse, but is it? So I want to dive deeper into the issue here and really try to figure out the root of the problem. So first things first, let's go over the numbers and the data to see what's really going on. Right now in Toronto, there are 2,500 units listed for lease. We're talking downtown Toronto, which is anything south of Bloor. Up to date in 2023, there have been 18,000 units that have leased so far in the year. So 18,000 have leased, 2,500 are up for lease. So let's assume 2,000 of those actually do end up leasing out before the end of the year. So for 2023, we're at 20,000 leases signed, and this is what's reported on MLS. So those are leases that have gone through realtors. It does not include any privately done leases, which I'm sure there are tons of, or any leases that have just renewed automatically after that 1 year mark. Now, what are the Airbnb or short-term rental numbers? We're gonna look at a website called Inside Airbnb, which is actually tracking all the currently listed units on Airbnb in the GTA. So when you go to the website and select Toronto, it shows that there are about 19,000 listings. We then have to filter through the data because this shows the number for the entire GTA, not just downtown Toronto. So let's go through and filter out some of these listings. So first thing we want to filter out is the rooms, because whether someone is renting out a room or not in their home, this unit will not go back into the rental market. So when we check off just entire homes, we're down to about 12,000 properties. Then we have to filter out to show only short-term rentals, meaning anything below 28 days, because there's lots of people doing furnished long-term rentals through Airbnb. So when we take out those, we're down to 3,700 homes. Then we have to check off only recently booked homes, meaning there has to have been some activity in the last 3 to 6 months, because there's lots of listings on Airbnb that are not active. And again, if you were to take those off the platform, they would not contribute to the rental pool regardless. So when we check that off, we're down to just over 1,600 units. So there are 1,600 homes being used for short-term rental downtown Toronto. There are currently 2,500 homes available for lease long-term, and as a whole in the year, we're going to be at about 20,000 rented homes in 2023. So the short-term rental market accounts for about 8% of rentals in the city of Toronto. If those homes were not used as Airbnbs and went back into the market, and that's assuming all 1,600 decided to go into the long-term rental market, would it make a difference? Maybe. I think Airbnb is often used as a scapegoat because it's the easiest out. The city or the government is just buying time. Before COVID in 2020, when there were no short-term rental regulations, where you had companies running double or triple digit listings, there were over 11,000 active listings on Airbnb in Toronto. That number has gone down almost 85% since then. But here we are where the rental market is worse than it's ever been. So short-term rentals, in my opinion, are not the problem. I think the city needs to invest in a better system for long-term rentals. Yes, there is a supply and demand issue. The obvious answer is we just need to build more. But the average life cycle from when a condo is sold on paper to when it is actually finished is around 7 to 8 years. So that is more of a long-term plan. And some people say, well, the building will never really catch up, especially with immigration levels. And that's a whole other topic. But what can be done now? I think the main issue that needs to be addressed right now is the rules and regulations regarding long-term rentals. Right now, it's no secret that the rules as they stand with the landlord and tenant board highly favor the tenant. Even if your tenant isn't paying rent or damaging your unit, it can take a year to evict that person. And even then, you're not getting your money back for that time. This is how bad it is. It's so bad that some owners or investors are willing to keep the units vacant and just absorb the carrying costs rather than put their units out for rent. So the very common response to this is, well, investors are the ones that are causing a problem. They're the ones making the prices go up, and that's why everyone's renting, and we have this issue to begin with. Look, the average annual salary in Toronto right now is just over $57,000 per year. The average price of a condo in Toronto is $730,000. Even if the average salary was to double, that's right, double what it is now, it would still be very difficult for an average person to qualify for a mortgage to cover that price tag. A $100,000 salary only qualifies you for around $500,000 to $550,000 mortgage, well below the average price. Yes, this is just an average. I know there are cheaper condos out there, but how many are there? So I took a look on MLS, and in 2023, downtown Toronto, there were 480 out of 4,200, or just over 10% of units sold that were under $550,000. And that's in a really slow down market. So it's not like we're close here. There's a very large gap between the average salary and the average home price in the city. Investors or no investors, the gap is just too big. The way I look at it is investors are the ones keeping the rental market afloat. Look at it this way. Say for every rental unit, there are 5 tenants applying. Well, if one investor pulls out and does not buy their unit, now there's one less unit available, and there are now 5 tenants who need to find another place to rent. If this happens over and over, you're going to have a buildup of tenants all applying to the same rental homes. And that's what's been happening. The people who can afford to purchase these units need to buy them and rent them out, or we're going to be in trouble. So again, from my perspective, landlords are the solution for this rental problem. I'm not throwing tenants under the bus here, but the system cannot be so one-sided. Why not create a system that is motivating for landlords? I guarantee if we were to fix the landlord and tenant board in terms of the rules and regulations, then the entire rental system would get much better. So as the system stands now, many landlords or owners are not choosing to rent their properties at all and would rather keep their home vacant. Just for some perspective, in 2021, there were 130,000 vacant homes in Toronto. Now, instead of trying to figure out why that is, in the beginning of 2023, the city decided they would instead try to strong-arm owners to rent out their units by imposing a 1% vacant home tax. The situation is so bad that they have to try and force people to rent out their homes. And even then, some homeowners are still deciding that it's not worth it to rent their properties out and would rather absorb this cost. In response to this, the City Council voted just this month that they will be increasing the tax from 1% to 3% in the next cycle. There's a reason people aren't renting out their units or resorting to things like short-term rentals that don't fall under the scope of the landlord and tenant board. Long-term rentals and short-term rentals should be able to coexist. If long-term rentals wasn't in such a bad place and people weren't so afraid to do them, then they would be able to coexist. But the way it is now, the second anyone even hears of an alternative to long-term rental, they jump on it. That's how bad the situation is. To me, the solution is really simple, and the city's doing anything and everything other than just tackling the real issue head on. Just create a system where landlords actually want to and feel comfortable renting out their homes. I'm not talking about completely wiping out the current system, but change something where it's not just so one-sided, or maybe increase funding towards the landlord and tenant board so that they can deal with issues more quickly. In 2022, the Ontario government actually made an announcement that they would be investing $19 million into the landlord and tenant board over the next 3 years. I think that's great, but that amount probably needs to be higher because it's still taking up to 1 year to evict a tenant. And I think the whole structure of the rules and regulations regarding long-term rentals needs to be reworked so that landlords can feel comfortable listing their units for rent. And that's it, guys. That's my little ramble on the rental crisis here in the city of Toronto. Let me know what you think or your personal experiences with rental properties, whether you're a landlord or a tenant. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're thinking about purchasing an investment property here in Toronto or the GTA, whether it be long-term or short-term, or if you're a tenant looking to rent a property, you can reach out to me using the contact information in the description below, and I'd be more than happy to help. I'll see you guys on the next one.